So I've pulled up at the campgrounds at Hawker, and I've met Shirley, and she's here basically giving me a bit of a history lesson on the Explorer's Way and Stuart.
Yes,
I don't know this fella.
Indeed. Yeah. No.
Okay.
Well,
Yep.
This is Australia, 1851, and you can see all of the settlement around the outside, but the centre was the big unknown, except to Aboriginal people. The Europeans knew nothing about it, and all of the explorers, it was their goal to get to the centre. So this is Charles Sturt. He tried, and this is Ludwig Lightheart, I think.
Yep.
Yes.
That's it.
And he ended up, he got lost out there somewhere. But Sturt, they even towed a little boat because people thought there was an inland sea. But no inland sea, and
Just lake air.
yeah, well, that was probably dry too.
Yeah.
And Stuart was with Sturt's expedition, and Stuart was the first a few years later to Central Australia, and that's the note that he left on Central Mount Stuart. This is the way the Aboriginal people were back then. And then this is the expedition with 10 men and 71 horses that finally got all the way across Australia. And here's the Borough Post Office where Stuart caught the train from there back to Adelaide a year later than when he went. And he was carried back in an ambulance between two horses because he was so sick with scurvy. And this is Stuart's lovely old map, and that's his portrait from the Adelaide Town Hall. And the map goes all the way through.
So you're saying that these black lines is where he actually travelled himself?
Yes,
The offshoots
that's right.
is where he went to find water,
That's right.
and then the red line's the highway.
Today,
Yep.
yes. Yeah. So it gives people some
It's where the
excitement
man
to-
travelled
to-
in. That would have
to
been late.
explore.
That would have been late 1700s.
No, that was 1862 he went.
62. I'm about
Yeah.
50 years off.
No, that's all right, because Adelaide was settled in 1836.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. Yep. Yep.
See, the eastern states were in the 1700s,
Mm.
but then Adelaide,
Is
and Adelaide was settled after Charles Sturt came down the River Murray and sent back reports that it was really nice country.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's another story.
That's something extra. There's sort of a lot of what I learned in. I do remember some of it from like school. They'd be going through talking about Burke and Wills, Sturt. I'm sure there would have been plenty about Leichhardt and goldfields here and there.
The goldfields, yeah.
You know,
yeah.
the sort of teenager in school, half of it's kind of retaining and the rest
Oh,
is
good.
like, "Ooh."
Oh, good.
So,
Good.
yeah.
Well, when you go there and when you see where the people went,
Mm.
it's nothing short of amazing.
Mm. Mm.
Like, people just would not do
Well,
that today.
travelling horses that have carriages?
No, they
Coaches or
did
anything?
not.
It's all on horseback.
No, well, Burke and Wills, I think they even took a double bed, and they had
Yeah.
camels, like the best expedition that the gold money could buy.
Right.
But poor South Australia, Stuart only had horses, but he
Yeah.
was a surveyor
Yeah.
and very exact and clever, and so they found water and they got all the way back safely.
Yeah.
Very
yeah.
thin, mind you.
Yeah.
Horses very thin too,
Yeah.
but it took them a year, but they did it.
Took him a year.
Yeah, and then
Did they was that Stir or was this who
this
was
is
this
Stuart.
one? Stuart.
John
Stuart.
John McDill Stuart.
John McDill Stewart.
He was a Scot.
And that's Adelaide to Darwin.
Adelaide to Darwin.
And took him
Yes.
a year.
Yes, to get there and back.
3 and
Why?
back.
Why? Yeah.
That's what.
Why a
3,000
ship?
Yeah.
It is. It's 3,000 k's.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why a ship wasn't sent to pick them up, I don't know.
Well.
It should have.
Well, how
because
long
it
would it
was-
take a ship to sail? Do you know?
Well, not that long. Not as long
Few
as
months or
finding water
something.
all the way.
Well. You'd
Anyway,
think. Yeah.
it didn't,
Yeah.
and they survived. And in 2022, which is next year, it's also the anniversary of the Overland Telegraph Line, and the Overland Telegraph Line followed Stuart's journey.
Really?
10 years later, yes.
Huh.
And that's there's a story about it in there too. Not Charles Todd. Yeah. And so that's interesting.
Is it easy
too.
to find?
Yeah, I'll show you. And
Yeah, I remember.
you being a Queenslander.
Well, I remember my grandma telling me about back in the day. She would operate the phone line, so you'd have your short and long cables, and
That's
then you'd
right.
have to go
That's
through the
right.
whole thing and
That's
mix and
right.
match. And
That's right.
she still rattles them off like nothing
Yeah,
these days.
Yeah. But the Overland Telegraph Line, here is Darwin, and this is the people when they pulled the overseas undersea cable ashore.
Yep.
And prior to that, if you wanted to send a message to anybody, you would have to send it by ship, and it would take probably about 6 months before you got any reply.
Wow.
But with the Overland Telegraph Line, it was almost instantaneous.
Mm.
And they it didn't have a lot of power.
So is it
all
Morse?
of these all of these telegraph stations, there were 11 of them.
Yep.
And they all had Morse code with batteries. And so they would send it on to the next one and the next one and the next
So
one.
it'd be
all
a
the way through.
leapfrog setup because
That's right.
it'd only be powerful enough to send the message so far.
That's right.
Okay.
And that's Charles Todd there, and that's the story about Charles Todd. So you'll be able to read that, won't you?
Yeah, certainly.
And he was a very clever man, because one of the things that he did, you know how on TV now we watch the weather report with weather maps? He had weather maps back in the 1800s. That
Really?
Yeah, and the people on the telegraph stations, they measured the weather. He taught them how to measure it.
Huh.
So
they like
very interesting.
with the weather maps back there, would they have like kind of recordings of what some of the weather was like?
I expect so.
So they'd kinda-
They're having big celebrations. That's the Alice Springs telegraph station. That's the best of the telegraph stations.
Yeah.
The others are there, but they're not in. They're not as in pristine order as that one is. Now we've lost where we were. Where were we? Back a bit.
Yeah.
That's a weather map.
Oh, okay. Because I was looking at that.
1800 style.
I didn't see that was Australia. I thought that was just an area and it was maybe mapping the mountains or something. But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, it's very pretty much just the patterns where the
weather is. Yeah.
Wow.
And he encouraged the public to follow.
So that's back in the day that when you wanted to see the weather, you wouldn't go click click click.
No, you'd not.
Go. Oh yeah, it's blue.
No,
the clouds.
You'd go like this. You'd wet your finger and you'd hold it up, and if your finger's cold from that way, that's where the wind's coming from.
Yeah.
Very techo.
Yeah. So there you have it. That's a bit of.
Go and get me your email address.
I will. All right. Well, I'll check
pass
this
it
off.
on.
All right. Well, thanks, Shirley, for the bit of a
History lesson. It's been a pleasure, Ryan, and I hope you enjoy your trip.
Thank you. I hope everyone else enjoys it too.
Thank you.